So, my sister basically abandoned her 3 kids to be raised by me years later. They offer me money as a thank you, but she demands it. Hello, I'm 48F and my younger sister Diana is 46F. Diana and I never really got along as kids, she was always snobbish and unpleasant to me, so we split up as soon as we graduated. I decided to stay in education after high school, while my sister chose to live with her boyfriend. Luckily for us, her boyfriend was well off, as our parents couldn't have afforded the rent for her to live alone. But she made it very clear to our parents that she didn't care about their well-being. I decided to stay in education, but she chose to live with her boyfriend. Luckily for her, he was loaded, so our parents could never have paid the rent for her to live alone. But she made it clear to our parents that she didn't care what they thought about her life and would do whatever she wanted. So my parents never tried to stop her and instead let her go. Diana had twin girls at 20 and a boy at 21 while living with her lover. My parents were pleased for her, but also worried because she now had a lot of responsibilities and no job. She was totally dependent on her boyfriend's money to live the lifestyle she wanted. Diana never married her partner, which I think was a mistake because she would have been entitled to alimony if they split up. They had to split up after Diana found out that he had been cheating on her. Thankfully, he provided the child support she was entitled to. He decided not to be a dad and gave up his parental rights. The girls were 3 at the time, but my nephew was only 2 keen. After that, my sister was on her own and needed all the help she could get to look after herself. Even though we didn't get on, I chose to help her. Our parents put a lot of pressure on us to get a decent job, and I did manage to find one, but it didn't pay enough to support all 4 of us. My parents and I gave a little money each month, just enough to cover the basics. It was hard for her at first because she didn't have a degree or any work experience. She had to start at the bottom and work her way up, which meant she spent a lot of time at work trying to get ahead. But it was hard because she also had to think about her kids and couldn't just leave them at home with a babysitter. It was just too expensive, so she had to rely on me or her friends. Our parents were also working and paying for water, so they couldn't stay home with the kids. I was in the same boat. She didn't have any friends who'd look after her kids while she was at work. They all had their own lives and jobs, so they didn't have time to look after her kids. This meant she could only get minimum wage jobs that let her work flexibly and get home quickly. This meant she could avoid paying a babysitter for long periods, which would have been really expensive. This went on for a few years, and I think Diana started to hate her kids because she saw them as things getting in the way of her success. She said they were the only things stopping her from moving forward. I'd visit her sometimes, not to see her, but to see the kids. I made sure the kids were doing well. I wasn't close with her, but I wasn't ruthless enough to let innocent children suffer because of their mother's poor decisions. So, my parents and I would check on the kids regularly. They were always complaining about Diana's mistreatment of them. She'd discipline them for the smallest things and hit them just because they were kids and trying to have a good time. It was a horrible life for them all, and I really wanted to help them by getting them out of there and taking them with me, but I couldn't because she was the legal parent and I didn't have the right to do it. She was the one with the kids, and she was getting child support from her ex to make ends meet. I felt really bad for her, but even worse for the kids. Diana started seeing other men, which made things a lot worse. Every time a relationship failed, she blamed her children. She was convinced that once her partners found out she had 3 kids, they would dump her. I think it was because she never mentioned her children when she was dating someone, only bringing it up after a month or 2, which seemed dishonest. I tried several times to explain this to her, but I thought she was being rejected because of the kids. She used to tease them about it, reminding them of how their dad had abandoned her and saying she'd do the same to them if they didn't behave. The kids were scared of her, and their childhood was all about their mom's narcissism. I thought she was being rejected because of the kids. She used to tease them about it, saying how their dad had abandoned her and that she'd do the same to them if they didn't behave. The kids were scared of her, and their childhood was defined by their mom's narcissism. I thought about taking the kids and running away with them loads of times, but I couldn't. I couldn't ask for custody or report her because, even though what she did was wrong, it wouldn't be fair to take the kids away from her. So the situation stayed the same, and the kids were just glad to have me around. Life. My parents were too old to be their pals, but I was always there for them when they needed it. They could never tell their mother about their ISS issues, but they could always go to their aunt, which they did whenever they had problems with school, academics, or even Diana. They would come to me, and I appreciated that. I really appreciated their trust. So it's no surprise that when they turned 18, they decided to leave their mum's house and move in with me instead. Now that they were no longer children, they could choose where and with whom to live, and they chose me. Diana was clearly dissatisfied and had a lot to say. She stated that she had squandered 18 years of her life raising these kids, only for them to abandon her in the end. She was really unpleasant about it, telling me that if I'd wanted to raise her kids so badly, I should have stepped in sooner rather than taking over after the work was basically done. I wanted to tell her that she hadn't actually raised them, they'd basically raised themselves because she was usually at work or out on dates with guys who eventually dumped her after finding out she had 3 kids. She had no idea what her priorities should be, and it was clear why things turned out as they did. The kids selected the person who had really been there for them, as opposed to the person who had always been cruel to them. She couldn't find anyone and was miserable in her life. It was obvious that she didn't realize she was hurting them because she was suffering herself. But I didn't want to rub it in her face because I knew it must have been rough for her, which is why she was lashing out at me, so I kept my mouth shut. That was it. After that, we didn't really talk. Her kids chose to leave her and live with me, and Diana also decided to cut ties with all of us and stop speaking to anyone, including our parents. This was weird. I mean, they hadn't done anything to deserve it, and it was weird that they hadn't chosen her side when my nieces and nephew chose to live with me. I guess Diana was irritated by that, so she cut them off too. It's been 7 years now, and they're all doing well. I don't know what Diana's been up to, but I know her children are. My nephew's at medical school and he's going to be a pediatrician. One of my nieces has a degree in literature and now teaches, and her twin sisters got a hair salon. I helped them all out with business loans and financed them as much as I could. I'm dead proud of them, they've done really well. They've really moved on from their old life. They're reliving apart now, and they only stayed with me for 4 years. To be honest, they weren't really living with me most of the time because they were at college most of the time, and they only came back now and then. I think they didn't want to go back to Diana's, because they didn't feel wanted there. It's been 2 years since they all moved out, and I'm very happy for them. I never expected anything in return for what I did because I truly believed it was the right thing to do. They were just kids, and no matter how bad things were between me and my sister, I could never be callous to them. I've always had a soft spot for them. About them, especially since I've never had kids or been married. I'm not really into that kind of thing, but I wanted to be there for them as a parental figure because their dad wasn't around. We all know who Diana was. They needed someone, and my parents were too old to be doing that, so I stepped forward. That's all I did. Never thought I'd get anything back, but I'm glad they're the type of kids who think I deserve a gift to say thanks for what I did, even though I don't think it was something that needed to be paid for. About a week ago, I celebrated my 48th birthday with my About a week ago, I had a great time celebrating my 48th birthday with my friends and family, including my nieces and nephew. I had a great time, and my nephew was kind enough to organize everything for me. Despite my desire to pay for everything, he insisted on covering the cost because he is now earning enough money to do things for me and show his appreciation. After the party, the 3 of them sat me down to talk. They told me that now that they were all financially stable, they wanted to express their gratitude by collectively writing me a check. I tried to explain that it was unnecessary because I was still working and could support myself, but they insisted that it wasn't about that. They were trying to repay a debt they couldn't repay me for what I'd done for them. It wasn't about money, it was about the encouragement and faith I'd given them, which they couldn't fully repay. This was their own way of showing their appreciation. I was really touched by their genuine act and wanted to share it. On social media, I just wanted to thank them for everything they were doing for me. My sister and I hadn't spoken in years, so I didn't think she would care. I was blocked on every platform, and I assumed she wouldn't see it, so I felt it was fine. Diana had never followed up with us or inquired about her children's well-being. She broke up with her first and moved in with me, but it was her fault. The least she could have done was show interest in their lives and try to be a mother figure to them. But to be honest, she didn't seem to care about the loss of communication, so I figured she was all right anyway. I got a reply from her a few days ago, which I wasn't expecting because, as I said, we hadn't spoken in 6 years, but I should have known that as soon as she realized her kids were financially secure, she'd start sniffing around like a bloodhound, trying to figure out how much money she could get from them. In her reply, she said she'd seen my post and wanted to talk about her kids. She admitted she'd made mistakes as a mother in the past, but felt she could make it right this time. She said she'd missed them so much over the last 6 years, but I'm not sure that's true. If she really missed them, she could have at least contacted me, even if she didn't want to talk to me. When it comes to her kids, she admitted she'd made mistakes as a mom and felt she hadn't been as present as she should have been. But she also said she really missed them, especially over the last 6 years. I'm not sure how true that is, though, because if she really missed them, she could have at least got in touch with me, like I asked. She's got her kids, and they seem to respond well to me. So, the timing was a bit weird, and I ignored her message. But then, when I didn't reply, she called me in the evening, and I got annoyed. She said she wanted me to help her reconnect with her kids, but I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I could see she was just after their money, not because she actually cared about them. I didn't respond to her message because the timing was strange. Then she called me in the evening and I didn't pick up. She insisted that I help her reconnect with her children, but I refused. I knew she was only interested in their money, not their well-being. If she really cared, she would have contacted them directly instead of talking to me. She couldn't let go of her pride and ego. She still expected her children to contact her, even though she was the one who had made a mistake. It was amazing how entitled she was. She tried to argue with me, saying that she wasn't after their money and that it was offensive for me to suggest otherwise. I assured her that I wasn't implying anything. It was so obvious. She was pretty shocked and disgusted by what she was doing. Then she accused me of stealing everything from her, saying that I had already stolen her children and was now stealing her money. I told her I didn't need the money and was originally hesitant to accept the check, but now I was going to take it all because she didn't deserve it. Now she's crying on social media, telling everyone what I said and trying to make me look bad. Some of my relatives say I went too far with what I said and that I'm greedy. I should probably apologize, but it's ridiculous. That's why I'm here to ask if I'm in the wrong for telling my sister that she doesn't deserve the money her kids have decided to give me. Just so you know, I've told my nephews and nieces about it. They said they'd heard about it from a few relatives and thought about talking to me, but they didn't have time. But after I called them over and talked to them, they said they thought I did the right thing. My nephew was open about his views, saying that he'd never seen his mom as a maternal figure. He always blamed me because she'd never been there for him, and my niece agreed. He'd always been the most outspoken in the group, so it was pretty much a given that this was all coming from him. My nieces were too emotional to speak up, but he was pretty angry and upset. He explained that Diana only spoke to me since she'd never done the basic minimum for them. This was. Even though she was getting child support from their dad, she would still humiliate them and make them feel terrible for just existing, which was never their fault. They think I did the right thing and have told me they won't contact their mom, no matter what. They also think I should stand up for myself and explain my side of things online. Now that Diana has decided to speak badly about me on social media, they think this is the most. They reckon that's the best way to get the message across. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm chuffed they've backed me up on this, especially 'cause my parents aren't getting involved. Diana never spoke to them after her kids cut her off, which I thought was weird. My parents' polite approach to this seems unusual to me, given they haven't spoken to Diana in 6 years. I was disappointed, but at least my nieces and nephew support me now. Lots of people have. I was asked why I hadn't petitioned for custody and taken the kids away from Diana if I knew she was a bad mother and mistreating them. I said in my piece that while her actions were wrong, they didn't count as torture, abuse or neglect. She was always harsh on them and not around for them emotionally, so while I could have filed for custody, it was pretty unlikely that I'd get the kids into my care. Courts usually encourage families to stay together, and in this case, if they'd already lost their dad, and their mum was their only parent, the court would obviously want the family to stay together. I knew that if I filed a petition against her or took legal action against Diana, she'd make sure I never saw the kids again. She'd make certain that she took them far away from me. It was already unlikely that I'd have been able to take the kids away from her and obtain full custody, so this would have put them. This is why I decided to play it safe by staying in touch with them and being available for them at all times. I'm not sure if it was the right thing to do in the long term, but at the time it seemed like the only option. Maybe there were other ways to deal with it, but it was all I could think of, so I did what I believed was right. It was difficult for me, and for years I debated whether I should file for custody or have the kids taken away from her and rehomed, but there's no telling. I guess what happened was probably best for the kids, to stay with their mum and still be able to see me and their dad. I hope this answers all the questions people had for me. I know I might have seemed like the bad guy for what I did, but I don't care. I know the kids are doing well and I did everything I could to keep them happy and safe. I was always there for them, so I don't feel guilty about anything. Update: it's been a week since Diana's. I've had loads of calls from family and other people today, all telling me off. They were pointing out my mistakes and scolding me. It was getting really tiresome and I was swamped with work, which is why I hadn't been able to post sooner. But today, I decided I'd had enough. After a quick chat with my nephew and nieces, I decided to finally make a post that shared my side of the story, as well as theirs. I don't think anyone in the family realized how much those kids had been through. As kids, how many insults did they have to put up with every day because Diana got pregnant early and left everything for her boyfriend, who was her friend at the time. Even after that, she carried on blaming other people for her actions and making out like she was doing her best for her kids. But the truth is, she was never around for them, because she kept telling everyone that I'd stolen her kids from her and was now stealing a fortune from her. Now that I'm sure we all know how much she had to put up with as a child, all because she chose to get pregnant so early and drop everything to focus on her boyfriend. Even after that, she kept blaming other people for her actions and making it seem like she was doing her best for her kids. But the truth is, she was never really around for them. She kept telling everyone that I stole her kids from her and that I was ripping her off now that they were doing well financially. I think people deserve to know the truth, not just her version of events, where she's the victim. They judged me for a bunch of reasons because they only knew her side of the story and sympathized with her. But the truth is, I deserve to share my side of things, just like her kids do. So, I typed everything up a few hours ago and published the post. She hasn't said anything to me yet, and I've had a few texts from relatives who were judging me earlier, but they've changed their tune now and are trying to apologize for judging me too soon. But honestly, it means nothing to me. I just wanted them to know the truth. I don't care what they think of me, but it was important for me to speak the truth and share how Diana handled her children. That's why they're no longer in contact with her. Now that everything is finished, I'm ready to move on from this. Honestly, I don't want anything to do with it. I was fine for the last 6 years when Diana didn't contact me. I think her kids felt the same. I don't get why she felt the need to create so much drama. If she wanted money, she might have asked for it instead of pretending to want another chance at motherhood. Update: it's been a day since I wrote that post. Diana may have woken up today and decided to get back at me instead of contacting me directly. She became increasingly dramatic. And she started commenting on that post, trying to make it look like I was lying, but it was obvious it wasn't going to work. As soon as she tried to react, her kids started commenting and responding to her, reminding her of specific things she'd been mean to them as kids. It went on for about an hour, and I didn't feel bad about it. No one else did either, because my nephew, nieces, and I were all having a great time. They were totally embarrassing her, and there was no way she could get out of it, since every single lie I tried to make it look like I was the one who was wrong, but they found out. I am glad I did it on the weekend, otherwise we might not have been able to get back to people as quickly. It only lasted about an hour, and then she started deleting her comments so no one could catch her in her lies. But it was too late, because loads of people had already noticed what was going on in the comments section. I think she started getting called out by others for what she had done. She started deleting her comments and saying she didn't mean what she had said, and then she blocked me. She also blocked. I guess her kids were a way of giving in, and I'm glad she did, because she would have lost if she'd fought with us. We've got the upper hand here, morally or otherwise. I think getting rid of the comments would be the end of our connection, but she chose to contact me personally as well. She messaged me saying she hoped I was happy now that I'd made her out to be a monster and everyone hated her. It was ironic of her to say that, because that was exactly what she was trying to do to me first. She started it, and now, when I wanted to give it back to her, she can't accept it. I don't get why people try to dish it out when they know they can't take it. Just don't cause any drama if you don't want to be held accountable for the results. I ignored that message, and that's what we'll all do for the rest of our lives, because she's no longer worth our attention. She's proven it. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.